I'm Pia Hontiveros. When the world is standing together while keeping apart, it is not politics as usual. Today on the program, rays of hope shining through the darkest of clouds during this pandemic. For millions of people around the world, like myself, we've been inspired by this poem entitled The Great Realization. This video poem is set in a post-COVID-19 world. It was written by Tom Roberts, a poet and filmmaker based in London. He's in the video. You see him right there. And Tom is also with us on the program. Thank you, Tom, for joining us. 50 million views and counting for this very beautiful poem, which you uploaded just 2 weeks ago on April 29th. Why do you think it touched the lives of so many?
Well, thank you very, very much for having me. Honestly, it's an honor. I never thought I'd be able to speak on, live to the Philippines. This is insane. So thank you. The reason I think it's touched so many is because it's a universal message that I think we're all looking for. We're all surrounded by an incredibly testing and difficult situation, which is not one that should be underplayed. Many people are suffering, and that's, it's important to know about that. But at the same time, I feel if we're only surrounded by messages of fear and distrust and isolation, then, that will start to affect the way we feel and the way we look at the world. And so I was determined to try and find a hopeful message in this situation.
And that, of course, would make us feel more fearful, more distrustful. So how does that make you feel? Like we said, 50 million views. I mean, yes, it is a universal message. How does that make you feel, that you were able to reach that many people?
Well, the thought that keeps everything very peaceful is this is nothing, particularly to do with me. I'm personally not any more interesting than I was 2 weeks ago. I'm very much the same. I think what I can learn from this is what is interesting to people is this idea. And the idea is very simply that if we choose to subscribe to, an optimistic worldview, then, actually the probability of a better world, coming towards us, becomes more likely. And I think people are very interested in that. And I think for good reason, because people are incredibly resilient, but just sometimes they need a glimmer of something to be hopeful for. And that is not to, ignore how difficult the situation is right now. And it's not to, walk around pretending that these problems aren't there. But it's also just to hope that, we can use this disruption as a way of kickstarting, something better and something more desirable for many.
Mm, yeah. I think what you mean is the power of suggestion, right? People have said that to describe your poem, it's very caring, it's gentle, it's kind, it's hopeful. What inspired you to do that? Of course, you are a filmmaker. You do this all the time. But apart from trying to bring across a message of hope, what is it that inspired you?
I mean, one of the things that inspired me, is the fact that this situation has very personally allowed me to re-examine some of the imbalances in my life. I've been locked down, and I chose to spend lockdown with my family for the last 2 months. And I have a 7-year-old brother and sister, and I feel because my father, my mother, and my sister are working in the hospitals in the United Kingdom, a lot of the day I spend, being their teacher and their childminder and their looker after. And, I feel like I've gotten to know them better in the last 2 months than in the last 7 years. And I think that's a problem. I found out how much my little brother likes to pretend to be Robin Hood, and how much my little sister likes to dance around the kitchen to High School Musical. And, and every night I read them a bedtime story. And these stories are always about, dragons and witches and kings and queens. And it feels, like those times were a very long time ago. And so when I sat down to write this poem, I thought, well, what if the things, that we found problematic in the world today, one day they will feel like a very long time ago, and they will be the stuff of tales and stories. And so that very much inspired me, that thought, and that thought inspired me to sit down and to write this poem and to film this poem and share this poem. And I'm so grateful that people found it useful, because, you know, the kind of the highest praise or the highest reward you can ever receive is to feel like you've contributed something useful, you know.
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about your brother, your twin brother and sister, a little bit,
Yeah.
a little later on the show. But I wanted to ask also, but you know, before you got to this point of being positive and optimistic about the outcome, were you also scared? I have to admit, I was really frightened at the beginning, and I'm sure so many people felt the same way. I mean, before you get to that point of optimism, was that how you felt early on?
Of course, of course. I've been asked in interviews since this has happened, are you an optimistic person? You know, and I don't think such a thing exists. I think we're all living on a constantly sliding scale between feeling hopeful and fearful, feeling optimistic and pessimistic, you know, and it's actually, I think it's much harder to be optimistic. You know, I think it requires less work to be pessimistic, you know, and it's the tendency that we can give way
That's true.
to quite easily. But if you put in that work to try and look for good within the bad and to try and, you know, force yourself to embrace optimism, then I actually think there's excellent reasons to do that, because the world around you will feel brighter and it will feel lighter, and actually, you know, it will have a ripple effect on, you know, on the way you feel, and then on the way your family feel and your friends feel, and then your community and society feel. And, you know, it turns out, you know, I was feeling negative and fearful and anxious and pessimistic, and I tried to make myself feel optimistic and to write this poem. And that has now rippled, you know, it feels from my end to every corner of the globe, because I'm having people reach out from Brazil, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, China, you know, Philippines. And this is incredible, because I didn't think from my bedroom I had the power to spread some optimism to the Philippines, you know, but you do have that power. It's just you've got to work.
Yeah. 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 Tom, at the beginning of the video, there's a little boy's voice that says, tell me the one about the virus again, and then I'll go to bed. That little boy is your little brother, right?
Yeah, that's my little brother, Kai.
Yeah, okay. You know, we're going to play the whole video, and then we'll talk to you more later. Here is The Great Realization by Tom Roberts.
Tell me the one about the virus again, then I'll go to bed.
But my boy, you're growing weary, sleepy thoughts about your head.
Please, that one's my favourite. I promise, just once more.
Okay, snuggle down, my boy, though I know you know full well. The story starts before then, in a world I once would dwell. It was a world of waste and wonder, of poverty and plenty, back before we understood why hindsight's 2020. You see, the people came up with companies to trade across all lands, but they swelled and got much bigger than we ever could have planned. We'd always had our wants, but now it got so quick. You could have anything you dreamed of in a day, and with a click. We noticed families had stopped talking. That's not to say they never spoke, but the meaning must have melted, and the work-life balance broke. And the children's eyes grew squarer, and every toddler had a phone. They filtered out the imperfections, but amidst the noise, they felt alone. And every day the skies grew thicker, till you couldn't see the stars. So we flew in planes to find them, while down below, we filled our cars. We'd drive around all day in circles. We'd forgotten how to run. We swapped the grass for tarmac, shrunk the parks till there were none. We filled the sea with plastic, because our waste was never capped, until each day when you went fishing you'd pull them out, already wrapped. And while we drank and smoked and gambled, our leaders taught us why. It's best to not upset the lobbies, more convenient to die. But then in 2020, a new virus came our way. The governments reacted and told us all to hide away. While we all were hidden, amidst the fear, and all the while, the people dusted off their instincts. They remembered how to smile. They started clapping to say thank you and calling up their mums. And while the car keys gathered dust, they would look forward to their runs. And with the skies less full of voyagers, the earth began to breathe, and the beaches bore new wildlife that scuttled off into the seas. Some people started dancing, some were singing, some were baking. We'd grown so used to bad news, but some good news was in the making. And so when we found the cure and were allowed to go outside, we all preferred the world we found to the one we'd left behind. Old habits became extinct, and they made way for the new, and every simple act of kindness was now given its due.
But why did it take a virus to bring the people back together?
Well, sometimes you've got to get sick, my boy, before you start feeling better. Now lie down and dream of tomorrow, and all the things that we can do. And who knows, if you dream hard enough, maybe some of them will come true. We now call it the Great Realization. And yes, since then there have been many. But that's the story of how it started, and why hindsight's 2020.
Because if you look at the camera, they know someone's filming it because they can see you.
Exactly. If you look at the camera, they know someone's filming it. Okay, lie back down.
Wait, can I just practice right now?
Yes.
And that, Tom, is your little brother and little sister. Don't kids have the best insight and hindsight?
I mean, they do, yeah, and they're incredibly honest, children, and they ask really useful questions. Yeah. Like, when I read them stories, even when I read them this poem, they would ask me, in certain parts, about the fish and the plastic or the companies or the lobbies. They just say things like, but why don't we just stop doing things like that? And you think, I don't have a good answer for why we're not enlightened enough as a species to just stop behaving irresponsibly. Okay. But, it's not always as simple, I suppose.
Yeah. Tom, I love the setting of your poem, a bedtime story setting, the poetry. It sounds like a children's nursery rhyme. The setting, it's a nursery or a children's room. It is your little brother and little sister's room, right? I mean, the color of the wall, the stuffed clouds as decor. I'm sorry, women like that. We notice all the details.
No, it is.
The music, it sounds like it's from a crib mobile. It's so whimsical, so pure, and so innocent. Could that be the reason why people also get your message and your meaning right away?
Yeah, I think, I've always been very interested in filmmaking. And so, if you're going to attempt to tell a story in a certain way, and I committed to the idea of this being a bedtime story, then, you want to make it as immersive as possible, so people aren't questioning the narrative because you've kind of filled it with elements. For example, the lighting in my little brother and sister's room is horrible. It's just this horrible yellow bulb. So I didn't want to light it that way. So I put a baking tray on the floor with 12 candles in it that are burning just below my head. And it felt incredibly hot. And to any onlooker, someone might have said, is that a good idea? What are you doing? But it just felt like telling this story by candlelight was so much more mystical, and so much more magical. And so, as a filmmaker, you're always trying to do little things that will help your story to be packaged in the best way that's available to you. But at the same time, the message is always more important than the elements.
Very true. Production values, very important. Visuals for storytelling. But yes, let's go back to the message. Let's talk about that. Hindsight is 2020 and how you weave that into your storytelling, into your message. I guess we also see things clearly with 2020 vision. At the same time, the pandemic is happening in the year 2020. It's like a happy accident that all these lines come together.
Yeah, when you like writing poetry, you are constantly on the lookout for any helpful puns or helpful wordplay that can reinforce your point. And when something falls into your lap as delicious as hindsight is 2020, which is a well-known saying I think in the UK, I don't know in the Philippines if that's a well-known saying, but we say, hindsight's 2020 because it's got 2020 vision.
It is also, yes.
Yeah. So when something falls into your lap like that, you cannot ignore it. And I just thought, obviously it's a little bit of wordplay, but at the same time, I just think that sometimes these little ideas can be so appealing to people when something fits that neatly like that, to the point that it can help reinforce your point. So I'm always on the lookout for little pieces of wordplay where possible.
The lines I find most appealing, the lines I love most. Sometimes you've got to get sick before you start feeling better. And we prefer the world we found. And we realized that early on in the pandemic, right? That this is exactly what we dreamed of and exactly what we yearned for. More time for family, more time with ourselves. And, I have so many other questions, but, producers tell me time to wrap up. So my last question will just be about this. We've heard you have a follow-up poem that you're launching or uploading tomorrow, right? Can you give us a clue about it? And are we going to like it as much as we like this one?
That last point is incredibly. I feel like if I ever set out with the intention to have as big a reach as this one had, then I'm setting myself up for enormous disappointment. So whatever people make of it, they will make of it. It's the next poem that I've written and want to put out. It'll go out tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. UK time. So I don't know what time that is in the Philippines. And it will go out on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at probably tomfoolery. The poem is called A Tale of Two Mindsets, and it's a Zoom call between optimism and pessimism, and they're having a debate as to their own validity in this situation. So hopefully people will be interested in the idea that was presented in The Great Realization, and they'd like to go and see A Tale of Two Mindsets on my Probably Tomfoolery channels.
Wow, The Tale of Two Mindsets. Of course, people will be interested. We're going to watch out for that. Tom Roberts, thank you very much for your time. In Filipino, we say maraming salamat to you.
Maraming
thank
salamat.
You for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It was very nice it was very nice to speak with you, Tom Roberts. When we return, it is far from ideal to be proposed to during a pandemic. It is unconventional timing, but we have that story of hope after the break. Be right back. This is not politics as usual, very unusual times all over the world. And today we bring you rays of hope, stories that inspire, stories that make us feel that one day things will get better. Our next guests are marking an important milestone in their lives at a very difficult time, and we'd like for them to share their story with you. With us are Pia Fabregas, who is a CNN Philippines regular, a sports analyst, host, and sports commentator Nikko Ramos. Pia and Nikko, hello and congratulations. Tell us how you got engaged just as the lockdown began.
First of all, Pia, thank you so much for having us. I never thought that I would go on air to talk about something like this. So it's very, very exciting to share. But yeah, it was. It happened when the last day of my regular work day, right before my boss at radio said that we wouldn't have to come into work anymore due to the ECQ. And so after that, I went to Nikko's house to pick up some stuff, and I actually had a bag of chips in my hand because it was just like, I was just trying to get through some things, pick up a bag and get ready to go. And he just got down on one knee, and as I literally had no idea. My hair was not fixed. It's not the moment that you kind of think it was going to be, a little bit of concealer or blush on, none of that. It was just a very simple, beautiful proposal. So that's how it happened through my eyes. But I don't know what Nikko was thinking exactly that day.
I had other plans, much more elaborate
yeah.
plans. But obviously the restrictions with the ECQ, I didn't know how long it was going to be, and much like what your previous guest Tom was saying, hindsight is 2020. I'm glad I did it then, because if I had waited for ECQ to lift, then I'd still be waiting now.
But Nico, share with us naman, ano yung real plan mo? Is it okay? Can you tell us? I mean, or is Bea going to hear it for the first time?
Oh no, of course. I told Bea already. I think the first few days of after the engagement, I was very apologetic to her, because it was a lot different from what I had in my head. Jason Magbanwa, who's famous for changing weddings and proposals and things like this. He's a great friend of ours. We had staged this big fake shoot that Bea and myself and a couple of our friends who host weddings were supposed to pretend to go to and kind of speak about hosting weddings and things like that. And we were supposed to capture the proposal there, with cameras and with, a set, and with cameos of our friends and family. And it was this big elaborate plan that Jason and I had been working on for quite some time, but it didn't push through. I guess I'm glad. I don't think we would have wound up on CNN Philippines had it gone through the way I had originally planned.
Oo nga naman. Yeah, you do make that very good point. But a tip lang, Nico, ha, next time make sure naka-makeup si Bea ng maayos. But,
Yeah.
but this is also, di ba Bea? Di ba? Very important. It's been
Super.
2 months and you guys have been physically apart. No? So in a way, this is like a long distance relationship, but it's a good test also. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's very, very strange, especially because Nico and I also work together. As he mentioned, we host events sometimes together. So even when our days are full or if we're busy, we're usually always together. So it's very strange to be engaged, and it's something I've been waiting for such a long time, and to just kind of not be able to plan a wedding, or we're just engaged. Like that's it. There's nothing after that. So we don't know. So I think what's really nice about this is while we can't be spending time together, we have something to look forward to. I know it sounds cheesy, but I do look at the ring when I'm sad, and I know that, we're going to be able to plan this wedding, however it's going to look like, and I'm going to be able to spend my life with him, and it's going to be okay. So I think it's very, in a sense, I'm happy we got engaged during the ECQ. I wouldn't have had it any other way, because that's true. If we were apart for 2 months, because we live separately, who knows what all these things that would be going through my mind regarding our relationship. So I just feel like it strengthened us really more than ever.
Yeah. Well, it's okay, Bea. I love cheesy. So go ahead and show us your ring. And while you're showing us your ring, I was just thinking, it looks like you're not the type of couple anyway to prepare for a big wedding and then neglect to prepare for your marriage. So this is also another good test for you, right? Because a lot of people go all out for the wedding gown, reception, etc., and then they forget to prepare for the marriage, right?
Yeah, I think that's the one benefit we have because of all the weddings we've been around, as a product of our job. I guess it's an occupational hazard when you host weddings for a living, as well. So we've been to all kinds of weddings, big weddings, small weddings, really grand weddings. So we've seen it all. So I guess we've vicariously lived through some of the couples who've had these big extravagant weddings, but we've also been lucky enough to see the value in smaller weddings. And what we've realized, I guess, in a conversation that we have a lot during this time, is what we've realized is the best weddings that we've attended, whether as guests or as hosts, are the ones where, you know, they're surrounded by people they love and only people they love. You know, I think that we're very fortunate as well. Our families are very, very supportive of what kind of, you know, wedding will eventually land on. And that was even, you know, before the ECQ and before, you know, this unfortunate pandemic. When I met with Bea's parents to ask for her hand, the one thing that they stressed over and over and over again was the marriage is much more important than the wedding. You know, don't overextend yourself trying to show off to us or trying to, you know, prove to us as her parents that, you know, you can afford or provide this big grand wedding. What's really going to be impressive is how you're going to be able to temper that and to manage that and be wise with what you guys invest your resources in. And you know, we're looking forward, whatever that wedding looks like, whatever the conditions allow for whatever that wedding will be. We're excited for it.
And Pia, as my dad is
that's
a pastor,
really great words. Yeah,
he actually wanted to just
That's
marry
right,
us
that's right.
already. And I said, I want to walk
Pwede
down
rin.
the aisle. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, you can still walk down the aisle, and then it's just you and Nikko and your dad and your mom
Yeah.
and Nico's parents. Okay, na yun. But anyway, well, I wish we had more time, but we really have run out of time. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to the both of you, Bea Fabregas and Nikko Ramos. Thank you for sharing your wonderful story with us, your wonderful engagement story, and yes, weddings. You know, weddings should reflect the rest of your lives together. So congratulations again, and thank you again for being with us, Bea Fabregas and Nikko Ramos.
Yeah, thanks for having
Well,
us.
still
Thank you
on
for
the
having
topic
us.
of rays of hope, a number of emojis are often used in these last few months of quarantines, lockdowns, and isolation in emails, text messages, or social media posts. Among them, the face covered with a mask, the virus emoji, and the heart emoji to express love and affection. But on Twitter, one stands out from the rest. It is this, the folded hands emoji. It was originally meant to be a high five, but many have come to interpret it as hands folded in prayer and in hope, because many of us believe that one day life will go back to normal, or as normal as can be. I'm Pia Hontiveros. It's not politics as usual, right here on CNN Philippines. Thank you for watching.